Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're kicking off a brand new series here on the Deep Dive, something to help all you future business superstars crush your GCSE business studies.
Oh, it's a fantastic subject to really dive into. Getting how businesses work, it can really give you a head start, whether you're after top marks or just want to be a smart consumer out there in the world.
Absolutely. It's
Uh,
like, getting X-ray vision, but for business. And to kick off this series, we're going deep on production processes.
Production processes, right. Might sound a bit dull at first, but honestly, it's way more exciting than the name suggests. We're talking about the entire journey a product takes, from just an idea in someone's head to a real thing you can hold.
Okay, now that's got my attention.
Yeah.
So where do we even start with something like that? Like, is there a roadmap or something for how stuff gets made?
Well, yeah, there is. It's called the supply chain, and it's basically like a step-by-step guide for getting a product from raw materials all the way to the customer. It's kind of like a relay race.
A relay race.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got me curious.
So, picture each runner in the relay representing a stage in that supply chain. You've got your suppliers for the raw materials, then the manufacturers, distributors, retailers, and finally the consumer. That's you. Each stage has got to pass the baton perfectly for the product to reach the finish line.
Okay, I can see the analogy working, but what happens if someone, fumbles the baton?
That's when things get really interesting and often kind of messy. When there are disruptions in that supply chain, it can cause a ripple effect through the whole system. Think back to that Suez Canal blockage back in 2021.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. A huge ship got stuck, right?
Yep. And it caused massive delays and disruptions in global trade. Businesses everywhere were suddenly scrambling to find other ways to get their stuff, other routes, other suppliers. It was a real wake-up call, showing just how connected and fragile those global supply chains are.
Wow, so even something that seems totally unrelated to business, like a ship getting stuck, can have a huge impact on production processes.
Totally. It really highlights why it's so important to understand how those supply chains work and all the potential risks that come with them. But hey, let's not dwell on the negative. Let's talk about how businesses actually get stuff made.
Yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty of production. I'm guessing it's more than just, mixing ingredients together.
Huh. You're right. There are actually different methods of production, each one suited to different types of products and what the business is trying to achieve. The two main ones you'll come across are flow production and job production.
Slow production and job production, so I'm guessing those are like totally different approaches.
Yeah, you could say that. Think of flow production as a really smooth running machine,
Yeah.
pumping out identical products super fast. It's what's used for things that are mass produced, like cars, smartphones, even your favorite candy bars.
So flow production is all about speed and making a ton of stuff.
Exactly. It depends on a continuous production line where each step is like standardized and often automated. Imagine a conveyor belt with workers doing specific tasks as the product moves along. Crazy efficient for making lots of stuff quickly and cheaply.
Okay, makes sense for products that are in high demand. But wouldn't that make it, like, hard for companies that need to change up their products fast? How do they adapt?
That's a really good question. Flow production, while it's efficient, it's not exactly known for being flexible. And that's where job production comes in. It's all about handcrafted, custom-made stuff tailored to what each individual customer wants.
Ah, so it's the opposite of that mass production.
Yeah.
We're talking custom-made suits, unique furniture pieces, or even like a personalized birthday cake, right?
You got it. Each thing is made from scratch, often by skilled craftspeople with a real eye for detail. It's a slower, more expensive process, but it lets them really customize things, and the quality is high.
So if I want something that's one of a kind, handcrafted, job production is the way to go.
Exactly. It's perfect for businesses targeting those niche markets or those that want to make really special personalized products. You are right in assuming it comes with a higher price tag, though. There's a real trade-off there between the efficiency of churning out tons of stuff and that individual attention you get with job production.
It's like choosing between a suit made just for you and one you grab off the rack. Both have their good and bad points. But how do businesses decide which method is right for them?
That's where the strategy comes in. They have to weigh a whole bunch of factors, like what kind of product it is, who they're selling to, their budget, and their overall goals for the business. It's all about finding that sweet spot.
So there's no magic answer that works for everyone.
Not when it comes to production methods, but one thing that is universally important for businesses, no matter what, is efficiency. No one wants to waste time, money, or resources, right?
Makes sense.
Mm.
But isn't efficiency just about, working faster? I feel like I hear that word everywhere, but it's kind of vague.
It's definitely more than just speed. Efficiency is about getting the most output while minimizing waste. And there are two key strategies businesses use for this: lean production and just-in-time inventory management, or JIT.
Okay, so lean production and JIT. I feel like I've heard those terms thrown around, but I'm not sure I get them, fully. Can you break them down for me?
Absolutely. Think of them like two sides of the same coin. They both aim to streamline everything, reduce waste, and in the end, boost profits.
All right, I'm all ears. Let's start with lean production. What's the big idea behind it?
Lean production is all about cutting out waste in the entire production process. And when I say waste, I'm not just talking about like leftover materials.
Wait, so there are different kinds of waste. What else could there be?
Oh, there's a whole world of waste hidden in businesses. Think wasted time, wasted effort, and even wasted potential.
Okay, now that's getting a bit abstract for me.
Yeah,
Can you give me some real-world examples of how these different kinds of waste actually happen in businesses?
sure. Imagine a factory where materials are constantly being moved back and forth between workstations. That's time and effort wasted. Or think about employees just waiting for approvals or searching for tools they can't find. That's more wasted time right there.
Starting to get it now. So lean production is about finding those hidden inefficiencies and making the whole process smoother.
That's the core of it. It's about working smarter, not harder, and getting rid of anything that doesn't actually add value to the final product or the customer's experience.
But what about that wasted potential? You mentioned that before, and I'm still not totally clear on what you mean.
That's a great point. Wasted potential can mean employee skills or ideas that aren't being used. Lean production is all about getting employees involved, encouraging them to suggest improvements. It's about using everyone's knowledge to find better ways of doing things.
So it's not just about like squeezing every last bit of work out of people, but also about giving them the power to contribute and actually make a difference. I really like that.
Exactly. And when you combine that with cutting down on material waste and streamlining everything, you start to see real benefits for both the business and, the environment too.
Okay, so lean production is all about minimizing waste in all its forms. Now let's talk about just-in-time inventory management, or JIT. How does that fit into the picture?
JIT is a really cool strategy that basically flips the traditional idea of inventory on its head. Instead of stockpiling materials just in case they might need them, JIT is about ordering materials only when they're actually needed for production and shipping products out as soon as they're done.
Hold on, so you're saying they make these big decisions without knowing for sure what customers will want? That sounds like nerve-wracking.
It can be, yeah. It takes really accurate forecasting and a strong relationship with suppliers to make sure those materials arrive exactly when they're needed for production.
Sounds like walking a tightrope. But I can see how it'd be incredibly efficient if they get it right. No more huge warehouses full of stuff that just sits there.
Exactly. JIT cuts down on storage costs, lowers the risk of stuff becoming outdated or damaged, and it's way more sustainable in terms of how resources are used.
Okay, so JIT sounds like a win-win for businesses and the environment. But there have got to be some downsides too, right? It seems pretty risky.
You're catching on quick. You've hit on one of the big drawbacks of JIT. It can leave businesses super vulnerable if there are disruptions in the supply chain.
Ah, so if a supplier has delays, a key ingredient isn't available, or there's a sudden spike in demand, things could go wrong really fast.
Exactly. And that's why a lot of companies go for a hybrid approach, combining JIT with some elements of that traditional just-in-case inventory management.
So it's about finding that balance between efficiency and making sure they can handle risks.
That's a great way to put it. It's about tailoring your approach to your specific industry, how much risk you're willing to take, and how reliable your suppliers are.
This is fascinating stuff. We've talked about supply chains, production methods, and strategies to boost efficiency, but I think it'd be really helpful to see how these concepts work in the real world. Do you have any examples of companies that have actually used these strategies successfully?
Oh, absolutely. There are tons of great examples, but one that really comes to mind is Toyota. They're like the poster child for lean production and JIT.
Oh yeah, Toyota. They're famous for their super efficient manufacturing, right? What's their secret sauce?
Well, back in the 50s, Toyota had a pretty unique problem. They were trying to compete globally, but they had limited resources and their production capacity was way smaller than their competitors. So they needed a way to make high-quality cars efficiently and without wasting anything.
Sounds like the classic underdog story. How they managed to pull it off.
They created what became known as the Toyota Production System, or TPS, and it's basically the foundation of lean production as we know it today. A core principle of TPS is Kaizen, which means continuous improvement.
So they weren't content with just finding one solution and calling it a day. They were always looking for ways to make things even better.
Exactly. They gave their employees at every level the power to spot areas for improvement and come up with solutions. That created this whole culture of continuous learning and innovation, which helped them stay ahead of the game.
I'm seeing a pattern here. Employee empowerment seems like a key ingredient in both lean production and JIT.
You're spot on. It's not about managers dictating everything from the top down. It's about creating a system where everyone is involved and wants to find better ways to do things.
So what were some of the specific things Toyota did as part of their lean production journey?
They were laser focused on eliminating any kind of waste. Overproduction, too much inventory, defects, wasted motion, you name it. They streamlined their production lines, standardized their processes, and put in visual management systems so it was easy to see problems and fix them.
Sounds like they were obsessed with optimizing every little detail.
They were, and it totally paid off. Their production system became a model for businesses all over the world and helped them become one of the biggest, most successful car manufacturers out there.
Okay, so they nailed lean production. Well, what about JIT? How did they use that to their advantage?
JIT was a huge part of their success. They worked super closely with their suppliers to make sure materials arrived exactly when needed, minimizing storage costs and the risk of stuff becoming obsolete. They also had a system called Kanban, using visual cues like cards or bins to signal when it was time to restock materials.
So it's like a super organized system where everything is in sync, like a perfectly choreographed dance.
That's a great way to put it. It's all about flow and rhythm, making sure each step flows seamlessly into the next. And when it works, it's amazing to see.
But we talked before about the risks of JIT, especially with supply chain issues. Didn't Toyota run into any problems there?
They did, and they learned some valuable lessons from it. A big example was the 2011 earthquake and tsunami in Japan. That disaster messed up their supply chains, and they had to stop production at several plants.
Oh, wow, that must have been a huge blow to them.
It was, yeah. But they were able to recover relatively quickly because they'd built really strong relationships with their suppliers and had multiple sourcing strategies. They weren't relying on just one supplier for critical components, which helped lessen the impact of the disruption.
So it's like having multiple backup dancers, just in case someone trips and falls.
Exactly. It's about having a plan B, even a plan C, to keep things moving even when things go sideways. And Toyota's experience shows how important it is to not only focus on efficiency, but also on resilience and being able to adapt.
That's a great point. It seems like the most successful businesses aren't just good at optimizing everything, they're also able to adjust when unexpected stuff happens.
Absolutely. And that leads us to another interesting aspect of production processes: agility.
Agility. I
Yeah.
usually think of like athletes and gymnasts when I hear that word. How does it apply to business?
It's about being able to react quickly and effectively to changing market conditions, what customers want, and even global events. It's like being able to change your dance routine on the fly without messing up.
Okay, that's impressive. But how do businesses actually become more agile? Is it just about having a flexible mindset?
It's definitely a mental shift, but it takes some practical steps too. For example, businesses need to be able to gather and analyze data really fast, to spot trends and make good decisions.
So being data-driven and responsive is key.
Exactly. They also need production systems that can be adjusted easily to handle changes in demand or what the product needs to be.
So no more rigid, unchangeable processes.
Right. Agile businesses are always experimenting, tweaking, and adapting their processes to stay ahead of the curve.
This is all incredibly helpful. We've gone from the basics of supply chains and production methods to the finer points of lean production, JIT, and even agility. Feels like we've peeled back a whole new layer of the business world.
It is complex, but that's what makes it so interesting. And the more you understand these concepts, the better you'll be at handling the challenges and opportunities in the business world, whether you're running a company, working for one, or just making smart decisions as a consumer.
You're so right. It's about having that X-ray vision we were talking about earlier, seeing those systems, the strategies, the decisions that drive the business world. It's pretty empowering.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's especially crucial for students like you who are just starting to explore the world of business. These concepts are the foundation for success, and the more you get them, the better prepared you'll be for whatever comes your way.
Well said. I'm feeling inspired and ready to tackle the rest of this GCSE Business Studies course. I gotta say, I'm feeling way more confident about tackling those production processes questions in my GCSE Business Studies now.
That's awesome to hear. It's always cool to see those light bulb moments click.
It's like a whole new world, you know. I used to just walk into a store and see products on the shelves. Now, I can't help but think about all the crazy journeys they took to get there, all those decisions and processes that made them exist.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of really understanding business. It gives you this deeper appreciation for how complex and connected everything is around us.
Speaking of connections, we talked about how important supply chains are, but I'm kind of curious about the impact of globalization on production.
Oh, that's a great question. Globalization has totally changed the game for businesses. It's made it possible for them to get materials and manufacture stuff all over the world, often in places where labor and production are cheaper.
So it's all about finding the cheapest way to make things.
That's a big part of it for sure. But it's not just about cost. Globalization has also opened up these new markets for businesses, letting them reach customers they never could have before.
Like the world's become one massive marketplace.
In a lot of ways, yeah. But globalization also comes with its own set of challenges. There are ethical things to consider, like fair labor practices and making sure sourcing is sustainable.
That makes sense. It's not just about profits, it's also about being responsible, you know?
Absolutely. And then there's the whole logistical headache of managing these global supply chains, making sure materials and products flow smoothly across borders and continents.
Sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It can be, especially when you have things like natural disasters or political unrest, which can throw those carefully planned supply chains into total chaos.
I'm starting to see why being agile is so important in business these days. Things change so fast, companies need to be able to adapt on a dime.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important for businesses to be proactive. They need to identify potential risks and have backup plans ready. Backup suppliers, different transportation options, and flexible production systems that can adjust to whatever gets thrown their way.
So it's like having a plan A, a plan B, and even a plan C, just in case things go haywire.
Exactly. Because in the world of business, things will go wrong. It's inevitable. And the companies that do well are the ones that can handle those bumps in the road with resilience and some clever thinking.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into production processes, I'm kind of amazed by how complex and dynamic the business world is.
It really is amazing, isn't it? All those moving pieces, all that careful thought that goes into every decision, from getting materials to managing inventory to picking the right way to make things.
I feel like I get it on a whole new level now. Not just how businesses work, but how the world works, you know.
That's the power of business studies. It helps you see how everything is connected and gives you the tools to deal with the craziness of modern life.
And I bet our listeners are feeling that too, especially those of you tackling your GCSE business studies.
I hope so. We covered a ton, but the main takeaway, I think, is that production processes are always changing. What works today might not work tomorrow, so businesses need to be able to adapt, come up with new ideas, and constantly try to improve.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And a huge thank you to Google Notebook LM for the awesome AI help in creating this dialogue. You've made our lives so much easier.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure diving deep into this with you.
And to all our listeners, keep those brains working, keep exploring, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.
Until then, good luck with your studies.
This has been a PEELC Strategy Production. See you next time.